How dependent are you on real estate taxes? Whether they're excise, the transfer taxes, or whether they're the
Sure. Well, the real estate excise taxes have allowed us to purchase many park properties over the last few years, including Marina Beach, which is another park just south of this particular location. And the council actually took some of that money and earmarked it for road projects. So we probably won't have enough real estate excise tax money to even accomplish any of the road projects this year. And it looks like our balance is probably going to go down as low as $100,000 for the beginning of 2011.
Are you laying off people?
I did furloughs last year. I gave the unions a choice of doing furloughs or layoffs. They chose the furloughs. I'd identified who was going to have to go. They did their part this year because we did a separate deal with Fire District 1 to provide fire service for us. We're saving some money there, pushed us out to 2012. If we don't do a levy this year, or if it fails, I will be presenting a budget to the council with severe layoffs.
We're going to take another short break. We're on this special edition of Public Exposure. We're talking with Mayor Gary Haakensen of the City of Edmonds. Like so many small cities, the City of Edmonds is facing financial challenges. And fortunately, they are tackling their financial challenges head on. But sometimes, as we're about to find out, the answers aren't always easy. If you want to find out more, go to two websites, myedmondsnews.com or ci.edmonds.wa.us. We've talked about a specific challenge that Edmonds has in looking at its future in a specific piece of property. All across the United States, aren't other mayors dealing with things where there have been car dealerships that have been just basically abandoned and other commercial development that is basically gone? They could be great parks or great this or great that, but the city doesn't have the money to pay for it.
Absolutely. I was struck when I was in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago by the empty retail spaces and empty office spaces in downtown D.C. And so I'm sure that's, at least from what I hear from other mayors, it's commonplace across the country. For me, it's just a matter of priorities. What's more important, providing services to our citizens or being able to pick up properties at this time?
Are the people, are the citizens, the taxpayers of the City of Edmonds, ready for the cutbacks that you have to do?
I don't think any city is really ready for that, because in government you're always saying, we're going to have to cut if we don't get more revenues. And we got a little taste of it 2 years ago with the layoffs and closing of Yost Pool, those types of things. I don't think any city is ready, at least in the state of Washington, to face what really may happen if we don't find a way to increase revenues.
Let's go to the Imperial Valley Living News. The headline is "Small Towns Could Face Big Trouble in State Budget Crisis." This is from May 2nd, just yesterday. Hundreds of small towns and cities in California may face delays or cuts in community development block grant funding. Let's go to the next quote. The city of Westmoreland has a yearly budget, this is a yearly budget, of $1.5 million. Of that amount, $250,000 is funneled to the city from the CDBG funds. And then adding to the concern is the fact that housing values have fallen as much as 35 to 40% in some parts of the county. So basically when properties are reassessed, tax money is not nearly as much. Is that something that you're facing in the City of Edmonds? Maybe not to that extent?
Well, certainly our assessments on properties have gone down, although I'm sure taxpayers feel like they're still paying plenty in taxes. The CDBG grants don't affect us in the way that it does this city because we've used it just for special projects like the senior center, those types of things. But those dollars are really hard to come by anymore.
Let's go to Oklahoma. Budget cuts could jeopardize fishing in Oklahoma City lakes. This is from April the 30th. Every department in Oklahoma City has been asked to cut 12%. Because frankly, the budget crisis we have right now, we don't have the money to continue to fund the fish hatchery. Let's go to the next quote. Fishing will decline. That's not just, there's just no way around that. When the fishing gets poor enough, they'll quit buying fishing licenses. They'll quit buying city fishing permits. They won't go to tackle shops. It's all a loss in revenue. So while we might kind of sit here and think it's funny because the fishing's not as good in Oklahoma, it actually is a big economic driver.
It sounds like it is to me. We obviously don't have that problem here, but if that's what brings people to their town, that's going to hurt them.
Is there something of a like nature in Edmonds that you're just having to cut either some services or something that the City of Edmonds is not going to be able to benefit from?
Well, we're very heavily reliant on our personnel because we're a service business. We provide services to citizens. It takes people to do that. We've cut travel, we've cut supplies, all that was cut long ago. So we're at a point now where if we cut, it's going to be people, and that's going to mean a lack of services.
Let's go to the next one. This is out with the tax base. This is a building that existed that was a major employer in a city not too far from Boston, and they're just coming in and tearing it down. This is from WBUR. In Chair City, budget cuts are amputating municipal services. This is from April the 27th. You could have a job and leave it, and 5 minutes later you'd be walking into another one. Next quote. Now the last big factory is pulled out and the trains roll by without stopping. And atop the long-term decline and loss of local revenues, the recession-triggered budget crisis has grown like weeds on the side tracks. Again, this is not too far from Boston. And you look at what we all thought was a thriving area, and cities are dealing with things like this. Did you have a major employer in Edmonds that has left?
You know, we don't, and we're not heavily reliant on manufacturing like this city obviously was. Our biggest employer is probably Stevens Hospital, and they're hanging on. They're doing okay, but we don't have the manufacturing base or the retail base.
Now you want to look at something that's interesting. Let's go to the next graphic, because this is from that city, not too far from Boston. I wish we could see it a little bit better, but basically the population of that city is 20,000 people, and the per capita income there is less than $20,000 a year. So how can a city operate?
It's tough. They're going to have to find another way out of it.
But you know, it's not just here inside the United States. It's in other places too. Do we have that next video ready? Because it's not just been a United States recession. It's not just been a United States economic decline. Instead, it has been a decline all around the world. And we're going to go to a very interesting place, Westminster,
value for money
right outside of London.
Is the bread and butter of what we do. And we've shown over many years that we can deliver more for less. This year, however, the challenge is tougher because public spending will be tighter. And we know that times are still hard for our residents too, because for many, the recession is over in name only. For some of you, finding a job remains a challenge. For many, losing their job is a real threat, and making ends meet on a daily basis remains difficult.
You know, Mayor, a very earnest-looking fellow, with the exception of the British accent. It could have been you talking, because he's talking about having to cut city services. Let's go to the graphic, because just so that everybody can know where this city is. Westminster, Soho, they're right next to London. Abbey Road is there. Hyde Park. All of these things that we've been hearing about all our lives and are legendary, they may have to cut services because of the economy.
Well, I'd like to have his accent, first of all, but it is worldwide, as you've mentioned here, and as I mentioned when I was in D.C., I met with Senators Murray and Cantwell, and I told them that small cities are the lifeblood of this country, and if the federal government doesn't find a way to help us out, we're going to be in deeper problems than we are now.
What would you want the federal government to do?
I think we focus so much on health care that it's time to look at the people and look at the small cities and say, how can we help them? How can we do some projects? We need to create jobs. We need to help small business. We need to have the banks open up and start lending money again. Once that happens, I think small business or small cities will start to thrive again.
What can a small city government like Edmonds do to get the banks to lend again?
Well, there's not much we can do to the private sector other than work with the folks in D.C. And the message that I gave Senators Cantwell and Murray was well received. Their eyes lit up when I brought it to them, and I've actually seen some quotes back there since then that they are taking that there seems to be a disconnect at sending that message further up the chain back in D.C.
So we've got about just a little bit under a minute left, and if you were to be able to talk to not only the City Council, and it's not just about the Skipper's property, but to every person in the city of Edmonds, what would you tell them about what's coming down the pike and what can they expect out of their city government?
Well, I think what's coming down the pike is that we're going to be facing some severe budget cuts, whether or not the Skipper's property is purchased. And since we don't know how the Skipper's property is going to be financed, it's hard for me to speak to that yet. But I do believe that the council has the best in mind for citizens of Edmonds. I know I do, and I'm going to continue to work to provide those services as long as I can.
Mayor, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
It is definitely, I've always thought that one of the toughest jobs is being a mayor of a city in difficult times, and the times certainly have been very difficult. We thank Mayor Gary Haakensen of the City of Edmonds for being with us. Go to two websites, myedmondsnews.com and ci.edmonds.wa.us, and you're going to find out an awful lot more. We'll see you right here on Public Exposure on its regular time, Thursdays at 8 p.m. Take care.
Great. Thanks very much.